The best of money matters. Right Business.
Welcome to The Right Business, where we dive deep into the stories of trailblazers who dared to disrupt the status quo. Find the gap in the market to find the right business. I'm Nadiah Koh. As the Philippines rolls out 84 million digital IDs, now used in more than 100 million public and private sector transactions, digital identity is rapidly gaining traction across Southeast Asia. But while national systems are progressing, the real challenge lies in bridging the gap between domestic adoption and regional interoperability. Unlocking ASEAN's $1 trillion digital economy by 2030 will require secure, scalable systems that work seamlessly across borders. Zetrix, a Malaysia-based Layer 1 blockchain powering cross-border identity and trade infrastructure, is looking to bridge that gap. But how? And as digital ID systems scale, how can ASEAN strike the right balance between national control and the need for seamless cross-border trust and verification? Joining me today to share more is Dato Fadzli Shah, co-founder of Zetrix. Hi, Dato Fadzli. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. All right, Dato Fadzli, the Philippines is making significant progress with its digital ID rollout. In your view, what are the biggest barriers for other ASEAN nations to adopt similar systems, and how can these challenges be overcome?
Well, if you look further afield across ASEAN, Philippines joins a contingency of other member states who have already embarked on digital ID. Singapore having its SingPass, Malaysia, of course, has rolled out as of last year the My Digital ID. So the notion of a digital ID in itself is not new, and of course it comes with some challenges, but I think what we have to bear in mind is that without a common set of standards, these digital IDs run the risk of remaining insular within those countries themselves, where we firmly believe that the larger opportunity is for an interconnected web of economies, and naturally digital IDs would be that connection point between the different countries.
Right. You've mentioned the challenges of bridging the gap between national digital ID systems and regional interoperability. So what are the critical first steps ASEAN countries must take to make cross-border digital IDs a reality?
Well, I think when you look at digital IDs, it is, although it's a form of digital document, what you could envision to do with them long term beyond just verifying your identity, in fact, transacting online and ultimately affecting transfer of ownership or rights or liabilities in whichever shape or form. And this could be something as simple as e-commerce to something as legally complex as title ownership of property. So, the Melita is a key piece of legislation which is being considered to be ratified across several ASEAN member states. And so that is really the key component here. Digital ID in and of itself is great, but what it's going to have to enable or envisioned to enable relies on a set of legal precedents in some cases, but also new laws and acts that should be introduced.
I see. You also spoke about how digital IDs go beyond just digital verification in the future. So how is Zetrix contributing to solving that within ASEAN and beyond?
Well, at Zetrix, we've been working on digital ID for the better part of the last 3 years. And I think we're at a very fortunate crossroads in terms of national and also digital development, where some of the standards have already been convened and by and large agreed at an international level. So when we talk about standards, let's talk about the technical standards of what could power a digital ID. The World Wide Web Consortium, or the W3C, the same body that has established standards for today's mainstream internet, for example, HTTP, right? That's how I think the majority of us access the internet and browse through websites, if you will. They've come up with a set of standards which essentially detail how decentralized identifiers could and should work. And this is key because, I think on an adjacent side of international discussions, you have the United Nations, which have advocated and through a white paper that the UN CFAC has released, has advocated for the use of verifiable credentials. So this within cross-border trade. So these two key pieces together, i.e. W3C standards for decentralized and verifiable credentials, are essentially the key ingredients to enabling cross-border commerce, interoperability, so that data can be shared between two countries for a pair of individuals or a pair of entities, without sacrificing sovereignty, data security, but allowing ultimately beneficial ownership and control to the users themselves.
I see. So we've spoken about how Zetrix is contributing to solving the gap within ASEAN. But what has been the biggest challenge, or what are the biggest challenges Zetrix has faced in developing a cross-border identity and trade infrastructure? And how have you addressed them?
So because a lot of the countries that we work with, i.e. Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, the Philippines, and China, and we've been very lucky that they are progressing upon the journeys of developing the digital ID. I think I break it down to three things. I think number one, you need to have the political will that the leaders of these nations look towards a digital and interconnected future. And by and large, the advocacy that leads into that has been one, I wouldn't say a great challenge, but definitely a key success factor that has to go into it. Number two is the readiness of the systems themselves, the cross-border systems. In most cases, these countries are inheriting incumbent legacy systems, which, even if they are digital, come with a set of connections, if you will, which are not readily interoperable. So trying to figure out how to translate between one system to another, is another key challenge that we've worked very closely with stakeholders on both sides of a set of borders for trade. The third is then getting the buy-in of the industry. And this is where I think we have had the most promise and encouragement, because industry practitioners are looking at this to decrease the friction, increase the efficiency of the movement across, or rather cross-border trade. When a set of goods, if you will, pass from one country to another, essentially three things have to happen. The movement of the goods themselves, the movement of the data between the borders, and the movement of the payment between the borders for the settlement. So, I think we're well on our way towards realizing the first two. The payments is a key piece of the puzzle that, I think many countries are gravitating towards a blockchain-enabled system that doesn't come at the sacrifice of their own sovereignty with regards to their currencies. So I think this is a fantastic space that there's just a lot of promise for blockchain and blockchain-enabled technology to come together and actually realize real-world applications.
Right. You mentioned about stakeholders. I also want to know about your collaboration between companies such as China's Xinghua BIF and Malaysia's My Digital ID super app. Can you share more about that?
Yes, certainly. So, objectively speaking, China globally leads the way in terms of the rollout of industrial and real-world use cases powered by blockchain. And we've been very lucky to benefit from this partnership and essentially learn how the Chinese have been able to roll this out domestically and take from that and lend it into a model where we could localize first to another country, for example, Malaysia, and then internationalize that to make sure that the two systems which are developed can start talking to each other and enable cross-border transactions. So with China, we have been largely learning from them and witnessing a lot of the commercialized rollouts. Whereas with Malaysia, we are facilitating some of that knowledge transfer over, and it's obviously part of the advocacy, but then looking at the specific set of laws in Malaysia that allows it. So why we started working very closely with My Digital ID is that we recognize that this is a key component for enabling cross-border trade, because you need on-chain identity of individuals to lend towards an on-chain identity of entities. And when you have on-chain identity of entities between two borders or across a set of borders, is when you can recognize a transfer of ownership of property, of goods, even of services across borders.
Dato Fadzli, with Malaysia set to assume the ASEAN chairmanship in 2025, what initiatives do you believe the country should champion to accelerate regional digital identity interoperability?
I think, as you had just put it, the interoperability, cross-border interoperability of digital identity is a key agenda that hope ASEAN will address this year. The mutual recognition of identities between two member states and the interoperability of data that accompanies or is enabled by those digital identities really will open up a new spectrum of cross-border commerce for not just member states, but the businesses and the people of these countries. So we really hope that ASEAN and under Malaysia's chairmanship will champion the movement towards enabling greater commerce via entirely digital means.
Right. Before we let you go, looking ahead to maybe 2030, what is your long-term vision for the digital identity landscape in ASEAN, and what role will Zetrix play in making that vision a reality?
Well, we hope that long term it would culminate in a set of homogeneous standards across the different countries so that the IDs become so seamless and part of everyday life that people don't even question how it works in the back end. The magic just happens, and you can cross a set of borders. You can send your documents or shipment across and accept it with just a scan of a barcode. And all of the magic happens and settles in the back end through a series of systems, centralized systems, but also blockchain. And that's where we see Zetrix's contribution in this future state. Zetrix is, the metaphor that I like to use is where the countries are separated by a body of water. We like to be those international waters where the data can cross and commingle, but essentially remain sovereign and pass through each other's borders. So we firmly believe that the future is an interconnected digital future, and we hope that Zetrix's role is in enabling the exchange of that data within this future.
All right. Amazing insights, Dato Fadzli.
Thank you so much. I thoroughly enjoyed our time together today.
Thank you. That was Dato Fadzli Shah, co-founder of Zetrix. This has been The Right Business with me, Nadiah Koh.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.